Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the top 10 best arc fighters, so let's get straight into it. In at number 10 we have got the Rhaggata, and I find that this is very much an important entry. While being one of the newer creatures that is in Ark Survival Evolved and Ascended of course, it really does add a lot in the combat space. It's a very fast, efficient flyer capable of doing a lot of damage and also picking up some pretty large creatures with the likes of Rexes and Parasaurus, something which still to me is extremely impressive coming from someone who's been playing Ark for quite a while. And although yes, cryos can do the same thing, it's still impressive that a creature can pick those up, because in a combat scenario you can also pick up those creatures too. They are fantastic for decimating bases, as they can just damage so many things at one time, and with their quick flying mobility they really are quick to defeat anything in any sort of fight. Coming up next on the list we have got the Desmodus, and this creature is capable of picking players off their mounts, making these things really great fighters. But this is sort of more PvE orientated, as I am a PvE player, but still it could be useful in potential scenarios. These creatures also have just a good amount of damage on them. You really can deal a hefty amount, and although yes they're a flyer and it can be a little bit hard to get around some things sometimes, I tend to use these things quite a lot for general aerial combat, and a wyvern could surpass quite nicely too, but that is only going to get an honorable mention on the list, hence here, because it's not on the list because I'm not really a user of wyverns for combat because of their terrible turning cycle, whereas this thing doesn't suffer from that, and you get loads of other bonuses like Sanguine Elixir, which is just a blood bag farm, and you know, sorry, they are blood bag farms, but Sanguine Elixir is for that 30% taming done just like that. Coming up next we have got the Spino, and this creature is actually quite a mobile carnivore, and I don't get why people don't talk about it more, as I sort of feel like it surpasses the Rex in the combat space, but I can't do that for the sake of this list. Come on, the Rex has been through a lot of times with us, at least for me, and that creature deserves a higher spot on the list. But the Spino still definitely does deserve to be here, with its fast underwater combat being definitely something to look up to, and something which I'm sure players look up to. They're pretty good for underwater caves in that aspect too, and you can bring them into given boss scenarios as well, which is great too. If you don't want to bring Rexes in and you've got loads of Spinos, or if you simply don't have Rexes and you've got loads of Spinos, they will definitely suffice. Although for the dragon I would definitely recommend a Theri. Not on this list again, but that deserves an honorable mention too, as that is yet again another great fighter tame. Coming in at number 7 we have got the Thyla, and this creature is here because it really does deserve the spot. With a lot of mobility on its side and the bleed ability, the first appearance on the list, it really does deserve to be here. It's also quite a popular caving mount too, and that's sort of why I've put the other creature, which could be a little bit of a disagreement between you and me, a little bit higher on the list, as I find that is a better caving creature, and I think that is a lot more useful for general fighting. But again, the Thyla really does rule the roost in that sense on the island. It has a lot going for it, and you can easily take out things like Rexes and Gigas. Gigas, if you're careful, don't just go in full guns blazing. Probably stay away from that mouth as best as you can, and maybe distract around a little bit, see what you can do, because I assure you they definitely will be able to do that. And if you've got a high level one, then you've got nothing to worry about anyway. So coming up next we've got the Barry, and I find that this is a way better caving mount. I know this isn't a caving list, but I find for fighting that caving use is really useful, and it's a great underwater combatant as well, so it's got a lot more of a bonus there, although its mobility isn't quite as good as the Thyla, and it does lack the bleed ability, though it can stun creatures up to the size of the Megalodon underwater, which you may or may not see later in the B-roll. It depends how much I'm talking about this creature, because this is being a bit of a faster list today, if you haven't noticed, because I'm in a little bit of a hurry, let's say. Either way, these creatures are incredibly efficient caving fighters due to their actually quite considerable amount of mobility, although still not much compared to the Thyla. But they can simply fit into all kind of caves with absolute ease and go in and decimate everything in the area. And they're a very simple knockout tame too, although they do spawn in the swamp, which is a little bit of a downside. At number 5, I'm deciding to put the Rex, as personally I really do love this as a mount. And it really does get a lot of that general fighting done. You can do pretty much any fighting need that you'll need to get done on the Rex. It is just capable of so much, and you really can't undermean it for what it does. It's got great health, it's got great stamina, and it really does pack a punch in the combat department, and there is no doubt to that, and that is why you simply have to put it on a best arc fighters list. You really can't beat something like the Rex. Yes, it's sort of something which everyone turns to, but if loads of people are using creature, it probably means it's good, especially considering how long Arc's been out for and how long the Rex has been out for, because it's been here since day one and people are still using it. It's not like it's a new creature or anything, so if you have never used a Rex, I implore you, use a Rex for combat. And although the turning circle isn't the best, these things do pack a punch in the damage department. Coming up next, we have got the Uranus, and in my personal opinion, I really do think this creature deserves to be here above the Rex. I've really loved this as a combat creature recently. I know people just kind of use that as a sort of healer, quote unquote, and not healer, sorry, they use it to buff their own creatures in a given boss fight, and they are extremely useful for that, but I find they are really nice combat tames too, packing quite a hefty amount of damage and far more mobility than the Rex, and they're really not difficult to tame either, being very simple knockout tames, and you should have no real difficulty in actually taming one. Yes, the biome can be a little bit harsh, but trust me, they really aren't the most difficult thing to tame. At least I've never faced extreme difficulty when taming these things, and I often tame them before I even tame a Rex, and a good high level one will carry through a lot of combat, especially with those roars as well. If you have some other creatures along with you, it's going to be some good times. In number 3, I've got the Giga and also the Carcharodontosaurus, so don't say I didn't put them both on the list, because I'm torn between them. The Giga's been around for longer and most of the time does deal more damage, while the Carcharodontosaurus is sort of more reliable because of that health, not having the rage meter on it, and they also deal bleed still. Yes, Gigas do bleed, but only when wild. They're a little bit more reined back, but they both still really do rule in the combat space, and although the other two creatures I think are better at given combat, these really do deserve to be here. The Reaper sort of does as well. It tags in as one of those other really big creatures too, so I'm actually going to add that along with it, because with these two creatures, as the Reaper isn't here on the list already, and you know, we might as well, because the Reaper is definitely deserving of a spot here. So again, don't say I didn't put that here, but they're both just insanely, all three of them are just insanely powerful, strong fighting mounts, and you really can't go wrong if you have one. In at number 2, we have got the Shadowmane, and this really is one of those creatures where it's like, they are king of the combat space, in my opinion, apart from the creature which is in number 1, of course. They've just got so much general mobility, it really does just make these things so effective as a mount. They've got the pack buff, they can jump to incredible heights, and they really are great swimmers too, which adds to these things. And although the creature in number 1 isn't particularly the best swimmer out there, I think it just has a few main advantages, as it's not quite as good in the boss arena is the Shadowmane, especially ever since they got nerfed as well. They're not quite as good as they once used to be, but they still definitely do really pack a punch, and I love these things for general combat. They also don't need any saddles too. The only annoying thing about these creatures is just their taming method is sometimes the absolute worst thing in the world, and I never really want to do that again. And in number 1, we've got the Deinonychus. This is still, and probably will be for absolutely ages, unless something way better comes along, my favourite arc fighter. These things spawn on Valguero, and you need to raid their given Deinonychus nest to actually be able to steal the egg from them and then raise that as your own. The fact is they can deal bleed damage to bosses, which no other arc creature can, and they can still grapple onto any big arc creature and absolutely rip them to shreds with the bleed ability. This is something just insanely effective in my opinion. Like, you know, you really do want something like this to be able to have a good combat mount. The bleed ability is such a useful thing, and these creatures have it. They have the pack buff too, which really does aid, especially in boss fighting scenarios, and they take no fall damage. Their mobility is fantastic. Like the Thyla, it is simply a great thing, which I think you must have, and in my opinion, the Dine simply is the best fighter out there. But anyway, that is the end of today's video. I really hope that you all did enjoy, as I definitely did enjoy making this one. As always, comment down below what is the best arc fighter to you, and if you didn't agree with my list, then feel free to put your 10 in the comments below. And I'll see you all later.